So I'll call the work session of the mayor and council for the city of Snellville, Georgia for Monday, January 22nd, 2024 to order. Got a quorum, everybody's here. We'll go through the regular meeting first, because we do have a couple of things that we'll need to add to the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to volunteer for the invocation? Pledge?
I'll be glad to do it.
Gretchen?
I haven't done it for a long time.
And we'll have the meeting approval, the minutes. And then, and just remember, there's 2 meetings there to approve the minutes. We've got Derek Cooper. He's the radon educator as an invited guest. He's just going to talk about the UGA's program for radon testing kits. Under new business, we have the stat contract, the annual stat contract. That's all the same as last year. I don't think there was any changes.
We increased a little bit on their magazine and advertising.
Okay. Any questions on that? And then 2 items, you want to go ahead and address those?
Yes.
We can talk about
So
those.
I'll pass out 3 down there. And 2 over there. You've kept the signature copy, right? Okay. I'm gonna borrow this for a minute. So this will be Resolution 2024-05. This is an extension of the moratorium on CBD stores. The CBD has been interesting because there's been some issues with people selling products as CBD. The concentrations levels are different. So we've been trying to come up with a way to regulate that much in the way we regulate our other businesses in the city. And at the planning retreat, as you all will recall, it was decided that there were going to need to be some changes to the UDO made. Whenever we change the UDO, it requires both the planning commission public hearing as well as the mayor and council public hearing. So it just made sense that we do all of these at one time, that we do the CBD stores at the time we do the other zoning changes. So we're just asking for one more 6-month extension of the moratorium to allow us to get those changes done. Because, it takes time with the advertising and that, so that we can get that change in place.
So on the approval of the agenda then, just ask if y'all are good with moving forward with the moratorium to continue, then we'll add that under new item B, or new business item B. And it's, the resolution number is 2024-5.
Cool.
And then one more thing that we need to add. You want to talk about that one on
Sure.
the G2?
Yeah, and I mentioned this at the retreat, but we are going to apply for a loan and a grant from GTIB, the Georgia Transportation Investment Bank. It's a grant and loan program that's administered by CERTA, the state tollway and whatever,
Yeah.
the
SRT.
State Tollway Authority.
Road toll.
And so what we have to have a resolution approved by the council to authorize Barbara to sign it, and it'll become part of our application. And what we're going to request is a $600,000 loan with a $500,000 grant. And the loan it's a very low interest loan. The state has several programs like this to help cities pay for needed infrastructure improvements, water, sewer, transportation. And it would be a 5-year loan at 2.74%, but we have the opportunity to pay that off early after the first year if we want. So you recall that we applied for this twice before and did not receive it, but they were making the transition from a pure grant program to kind of a loan and grant program. So we think that this will make it more competitive going forward, and we'll use it. I guess I didn't even say the project. We'll use it for the North and Wisteria improvements there, to add the turn lanes and to help people move through that intersection.
faster.
So we
that's my
really-
approval.
We really don't need the loan, but in order to get the grant, the free money, we're gonna have to go in with both, with that combination. So, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. And
Third
I
time
mean,
will
we'll
be
apply
the charm.
for it, and there's no guarantee we'll get it, but hopefully this strengthens our case.
$600,000 loan and a what amount grant?
$500,000 grant.
$500,000 grant.
That's right.
That's what you, okay.
That's right. Thank you.
So that, if y'all are agreeable with moving forward with that, then that would be new item, or new business item C. And that would be resolution 2024-4.
We're getting consideration action authorizing the mayor to sign the grant application.
A resolution to approve
A
resolution.
to
Can
apply
we get a copy of the resolution?
To apply for the grant.
for the loan and grant.
And that's
Okay.
2024-04?
That's right.
Yes,
That's right.
it's 4.
04.
We talked about them in reverse order, and I've already had them all written down on my page, so
Okay, so that needs to be letter B.
No, she
No.
wouldn't let me change them. See?
let it be item C. We're doing them both in the same night, we'll be fine.
And Melissa's trying to find it to send it to us.
It's right here.
So letter B is 05. And
Yes.
letter C is 04.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know if I can live with that.
Yeah, that's kind of.
My
it's
sense
a
of
little bit
order
struggle.
is
For
like-
OCD people, that's difficult.
We're getting you out of your comfort zones.
Okay.
Pushing everybody just a little.
Okay.
Even the artists are struggling with it. The CPA's okay.
Wow, that's serious.
It's amazing the things that you have trouble with. All right, anything else on the regular meeting? All right, then we will go through, any correspondence? I want to let y'all know that one of our representatives, Segun, Adina, and I are going to meet Saturday morning at Main Street Restaurant at 9 o'clock, if any of you would like to join us.
9.
9. It's not a have to, he just wanted to kind of touch base with the legislative session coming on and everything.
So
We
we
didn't
can't
get,
have more than 3, so.
yeah.
Okay, I'm in. I
Okay.
need to return his call and I'll just do it that way.
Okay.
That's
It's a
okay.
good way.
Yeah.
to do it.
Good way to do it.
Main Street, okay.
And one of the reasons for that is with the redistricting, if he runs for reelection and is reelected, he will actually be representative of 25% of Snellville. So he'll be one of our 4 representatives.
Yes.
Do we have 3 already?
No,
No.
we have 1.
I have 2. I'll come.
Oh, I thought you meant,
Oh, yes.
how many representatives? All right, well, y'all tell him I said hi.
Okay. Oh, I don't have to come.
No, feel free. You know what, just let me know, or let us all know.
All right,
Gretchen looks
anything
for
city
stuff
attorney's
for
report?
Saturday.
I think we covered everything last meeting.
All right, and so now under discussion items, we've got the Grove signage update. Michael Kidd with Root Design. Michael,
Hello, everybody.
how are you?
Michael.
Doing good. Everybody staying warm?
Mm.
Trying
Better
For the
than we
moment.
were.
No busted pipes, I hope.
He's got
No.
He got the purple resolution.
Yes, I did get the.
Yeah, what's with the
memo.
purple tonight?
I
It was in
didn't,
the air.
I could have wore the purple tie if I knew that.
All right, so looking at an update to the Grove signage. So this is kind of where we left off last time.
Ooh, wow.
We talked about this, the big Grove sculpture letters out in the Grove area at the tree save. And what we discussed last time were these big kind of boxy letters. The initial concept we were looking at was to do some sort of metal framework, and that these would be clad with with a wood slat material to clad the letters. After that meeting, the last meeting, I went and met with a sign fabricator that I've done a decent amount of work with. They've been around for a long time. And talked through this concept idea with him, and he kept running into problems trying to figure out a good way, a good clean way to construct these the way that we were talking about them and had conceived these originally. One of the big challenges was simply the wood cladding to go around some of these tight curves. He said it's going to be really difficult to do with that material and probably wouldn't look the way that we would want it to. He said it's gonna look clunky. It's gonna look kind of unfinished. So we started walking around his shop and looking at other types of signs that he does and talking about other materials and ways to construct these things. And then he sat down and kind of sketched some ideas out, which are here. So his suggestion was a welded aluminum letter that could be painted, so you could essentially have a very similar finish and outward appearance. It would just be constructed out of aluminum as opposed to wood. And then on the face of it, this would be similar to what's called a channel letter, which you guys have probably all seen at a lot of businesses, where you have an acrylic face of the letter. You have kind of an aluminum case, and the face of it is a clear or white or
That's what
colored.
we currently have on top of the parking deck, correct? The big Grove sign?
I don't know if that's the same, but it very well could be. So what we were playing around with here was trying to still achieve that same aesthetic on the face of the letters using the aluminum framework and the acrylic face. So, and then you would have this bar that we talked about. At the last meeting, we talked about incorporating Snellville somehow in the sign. So we would need some sort of structure for the letters to sit on anyway, and we talked about doing that as a bar that could also have some letters cut out of that. And this is what we ended up with the sign folks as a concept. So it's very similar from the front elevation. It's very similar to what we talked about aesthetically at the last meeting. Same dimensions on the letters, same basic appearance with the slats. This would just be aluminum framework with acrylic as a face to it. Much easier to construct. Actually would end up being easier to repair if something got damaged or needed to be replaced, because this is more typical of sign construction than what we were looking at before. Another really nice benefit of this is that now these letters can be internally lit like you would light any other channel letter. So, and that can be color changing LED very easily and without too much cost associated with that. So that gives you a whole lot more options for lighting and a much bigger effect at night, because this will really light up. This would be bright and you can change the colors, you can do it seasonally, you can program it.
You could also put it on a dimmer though too.
You could put it on a dimmer
to
to tone it down if there's an event, or you could just turn it off. So you would have all those controls to this, as opposed to trying to light the original structure with exterior lights that you don't have that control over. So that to me was a really appealing aspect of this type of construction. This bar here, you can see this is a side elevation of what that would look like. So these letters would be about 8 inches thick. And that space holds the lighting infrastructure for the LED. The back panel of the letter would be removable with tamper-proof screws, so that if you did need to fix or replace any of the lighting equipment, you could get to it that way. This also allows for a bracket in the back that would sit on top of this bar and would secure those letters. That was one of the things that we talked about how we were going to do that last time. That's a very simple, easy way to do that for these letters. And then this bar here is 16-inch square, the inside of which would be hollow as well, so that these letters would be cut out and there would be a panel of acrylic there too. And that would probably, my recommendation is that that would just stay white, but you could also do that color changing if you wanted to. During the day, it would just appear to be that white color. And then the aluminum, we could paint whatever finish we wanted to paint them. But I think that came out really nice. I think that would look really sharp. So I wanted to bring that back, since that's a pretty drastic change in materials of what we talked about originally from the concept. I wanted to bring that back and kind of see what your reactions were to that. Any feelings one way or the other? Any questions?
Is the white acrylic gonna yellow over time?
It would eventually. He said the lifespan of that, of the materials for that signage would probably be about 10 years. So you'd probably be looking at having to replace the wood at that time as well. In terms of maintenance on this, what he recommends for all of his signage, regardless of the materials, regardless of what it's made of, is that you simply wipe it down at least once a year. He said signs hardly ever get maintained, and they end up looking bad after about a year and a half. They start getting moldy and dirty, and he said all you have to do is literally go out with a wet rag and wipe the thing down, and you get all the dirt off and make sure it's not collecting anything that's going to start to turn into mold or anything like that.
It actually may need a little more because it'll be under all of that.
Yeah, so you might need to do that a couple times a year.
Yeah.
It's not a big sign, so it wouldn't take that long to do it.
Right.
But that would be the recommendation in terms of the maintenance.
Now, on a positive note, if this had interior RGB LEDs, you could basically do the same thing with the sign that's already being done with the LED panels on the top of the elevator tower, which can change colors and various times of the year you do for whatever event is going on, red, white, and blue for 4th of July, that sort of stuff. My question to the group would be, we originally had the slats in the Grove sign because it was going to be wood. There's added expense to put the aluminum bars in there, and does it give us anything? Do you want to keep that, or do you just want the open letters?
And this may help to kind of wrestle with that question. It's a really good question. So that's kind of what it would look like without the acrylic. That's what the aluminum structure would look like.
Does make
to
it
give you an
stronger.
idea. Those do make it stronger. In talking with the sign company, they don't add a whole lot of expense to it. But without that, so this is what a typical channel letter would look like. We're used to seeing this type of letter on the face of businesses all over the place. So we need to be careful that we don't end up looking too commercial, I think. And to me, those slats, those bars, give it just that little bit of customization to make it stand out and be different in that way. And I think it still speaks to the nature of the word and the development, the growth, this idea of the Grove. But that's a great question and something that
So-
you need to.
Do you know if they would be it would be a full acrylic panel for, let's say, the G, that would just slide into the back
Yeah.
of the metal, not in
Yep.
it? Okay.
Yeah, so it would slide into the back. It would
Just
be-
wanted to make sure there weren't individual little pieces
No,
that
no,
are
no,
cut
it's a
specifically.
solid piece of
Send it
acrylic.
together.
So this shows that those pieces of, those ribs or slats, that would be 3/4 inch aluminum that would be part of the aluminum frame. And they said that that would be fairly easy to do from a construction standpoint. So the acrylic panel would be a solid piece that would go behind that. There's actually a 1-inch frame around the edge that creates a lip in the front,
Right.
and the acrylic sits behind that, and they fasten it to that 1-inch lip.
Do those
around the
bars make it significantly harder to wipe down? Because if the bars are on top of the acrylic, it seems like you're gonna have to go between all the
Yeah, so
bars to clean it.
That's where you would really need to focus the cleaning is probably on the top of each of those bars. But again, you've got half a dozen per letter. So it does add a little bit to the maintenance, as opposed to having a solid surface like this, where you just wipe the whole thing down once.
The bars are gonna make it more difficult to break the acrylic if people are throwing balls, throwing rocks, trying to
That's-
vandalize.
That's true as well, yeah. Yeah. So, but this is pretty similar to what we're talking about with that frame around the outside edge, and then you could imagine the bars in between. Now, our letters don't need to be backlit, because we don't have anything behind them, but this is also internally lit, and that's what our letters would be. And then, like I said, the frame could be painted whatever finish we wanted for that.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. What was the finish on the aluminum surface? Whether it's anodized or sprayed or epoxy coat or...
Yeah, I think they can do a number of different finishes. I think typically what they do is kind of an auto body paint finish.
Right.
Like a high quality
So you're
paint.
talking, particularly if you clean it once a year, you're talking 20-year
Yeah,
lifespans
yeah.
on the finish.
Well, I like the fact that it's more of a traditional sign
Mhm.
that's easier to replace or build, if something happens to it.
Yeah, it takes a lot of it still looks like it still is a custom sign and still looks very custom, unique to this project. But the construction of this, if A1 Signs didn't do it, if somebody else did it, if you had somebody else that needed to replace it, whatever, any sign company can deal with this.
Yeah.
The other type of construction we were talking about was very specific and custom, and that would have been difficult to find if you needed to replace or repair or anything like that. There's some pros and cons either way, but I think this is a really good
Option, yeah, for sure.
a good direction to go into. So.
The only thing I would say is, as far as the height, and this is detailed, right now it's showing the bar being 2.4.
Yeah.
We have to make sure it goes above
We need to get
the
that
fence.
above the fence, yeah. So, that's just what they had on their concept. And it may end up needing 4 posts, or, depending on
Yeah,
the structure, but, it's really, it wouldn't end up being real heavy, because all that's hollow.
right, and aluminum.
So, yeah.
So, forgive me, you did a mock-up online, or digitally, showing the 5-foot letter? Is that what we've seen in the past? I just want to know what it'll look like in
Yeah,
situ.
yeah, I don't have those images from the previous presentation, but.
Right, but
we
it's
did
the
that,
same
yeah.
size as
Yes,
the previous
same size
presentation.
as
Okay,
previous,
that was really what the question was.
Yep,
So,
yep, and you can see off to the side the
I'm good.
shadow person for scale.
Comes with the
Let's see.
With the briefcase.
Yeah.
Or the suitcase. as the
Yeah.
That was,
case may be.
Christie thought that was a lunchbox.
And, yeah, eat lunch at Grove.
Yeah.
That's his takeout bag from
Yeah.
Parkside District.
And then this shows the kind of typical channel letter, the internal lighting. That happens to have a red face on it, but like I said, all these sign companies do these types of letters.
Well, and that helps us if we're not reinventing the wheel, so.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, so no more questions on that before we go to the next one. So the next one is still much easier. So this one was the one that we talked about at the pedestrian gateway over the apartments, doing some sort of arbor structure that we would grow vines on. This is one that I found online that's more of like a residential scale, but this was very similar to what I was thinking about in my head for that arbor. So this just has two metal, now they're connected at the top, so it's four pieces. But the metal hoop, and then the way this is constructed, they have a structural bar at the top, but here they have, if you can see that, they've got the steel cable for growing the vines up. So it's a real kind of light, transparent structure itself that's intended to be more of a landscape feature as the vines grow on top. This is something that we would really need somebody to fabricate custom to fit the dimensions of what we're looking for that walkway out there. Because the walkway actually flares out as you come out towards the apartments, and it starts to slope down a little bit, so all that would have to be kind of field measured and fabricated to fit that space. But it's still, it's not a complicated structure. It's not a lot of material. So if this is okay from a kind of general concept standpoint, my next step here was going to be to talk to a metal fabricator and see what would be involved. They may want to do actual little bars, thin metal bars across there instead of the cable rail. We can talk through details like that if we want just 2 hoops or 3 or 4, how wide do we want this thing, and kind of get a general idea of what they're thinking in terms of cost. So that'll be the next thing that I'll send back to you guys. Will be the sign, the A1 signs can give me a budget estimate on the Grove piece, and then when I talk to a fabricator for this, we can get an estimate on what that would be. But you'll have the 2 signs themselves, or the 2 structures themselves. Then there will be some additional landscaping and possibly some irrigation modifications. And then whatever electrical service connections we need to make for the Grove letters. Which won't be a whole lot, because we've got the transformers out there for the lights that are up in the trees.
And I'm betting we're gonna wanna make sure there's an electrical outlet, so
Oh, yeah.
on Christmas, this can be
Yes.
lit.
Yep.
Please.
I'm just
Or
Just saying,
imagining.
just saying.
Yeah.
power.
I'm trying to think, I don't think we have one currently over there. I know we have electrical near there.
Current.
I'd have to check and see. There's a light pole not very far from this location
Right.
that has an outlet at the base of the light pole. We could certainly pull off from that and add another
Right,
receptacle.
because anything we're doing is gonna be LED and it's gonna be low
Yeah,
draw.
right. So,
Okay, everybody go with that direction?
good with that? Good with both of those? All right, good. Well, we will, like I said, I'll start getting some budget pricing together and send that back to you. And then we'll go from there. All right. And I think the last thing, real quick, you wanted me to talk briefly
yeah,
about the
green.
town green,
Yeah.
the grass out there. So I know there's been issues with erosion and compaction and the turf, struggling to keep the grass growing. That's something that we did talk a lot about during the initial town green development. Initially, we talked about trying to do something similar to what we ended up doing out at the Grove, which is that modified sports field profile where we've got the base and the sand and then the turf. And that's a much more resilient and sustainable profile for growing healthy turf where you got a lot of foot traffic. It's also a lot more expensive. And when the town green was going in, the decision was made that we just couldn't afford to do that. So we went with just putting sod down out there, knowing that that was going to be an issue over time. And the other challenge with the town green is simply the volume of vehicular, primarily traffic that you have out there. There's not much that you can do with living turf that's going to sustain that well long-term without having issues. You can have what's there and try to replace and repair and maintain, and that's what you've been doing, and that is frustrating, and I get that, and it's not a very sustainable solution. We talked about the sports field profile. That would be extremely expensive to rip all that up and regrade it and do the sub-drainage and the sand and new turf. That would be a huge expense out there. Another option is looking at something like a product that's called grass pave that you're probably familiar with, which is the plastic rings. That's a reinforced system that it's either used with gravel or with grass. You can use it with both. The grass pave in particular is used primarily for things like fire lanes. So it's designed to support a fire truck. So structurally, it's perfectly fine for the vehicular loading that you have out there. It'll support whatever vehicles you want to put on it. The challenge again is just the frequency and the volume of the traffic. The fire lane isn't going to have traffic on it, but whenever there's an emergency. The other common time that product is used is for overflow parking. There are a lot of stadiums that have used that material where a lot of their parking isn't used, but for those, dozen times during the year when they have a game or an event. So they use that grass paved material for the parking space, for the overflow parking spaces. And it works really well in those situations as well. So that's a possibility. Long term, it's hard to say what sort of issues you might run into just, again, with the frequency of the traffic that you're going to have out there. What I suggested when this first came up to Butch and Matt was the worst part, from what I understand, is right there as you exit the bricks onto the green. That's the worst part. That gets all the traffic and the turning and everything else. So you could do a section right there that's reinforced with that grid material, with the grass pave, and see how that works. If you do a small area, it wouldn't be that expensive to install it. You're not talking about redoing the entire green, and that's the heaviest traffic area. So that's going to be your best case study. So you could do a section fairly easily right there at the edge of the bricks and see how that holds up over time.
Couldn't we also expand out the pavers a little bit further?
You could, but then you'd just be chasing that issue. The issue is when the vehicles come off the pavers and onto the grass.
Right.
That's where all the friction and compaction and all that occurs. So that's why that area is always gonna be the worst spot of it.
Farmers market manager has a
Yep.
question.
One thing right at the entrance, when you go onto the grass, there, the existing sidewalk, parking lot, or whatever, was never taken up. So there is only about 3 inches of soil at that point, if that, to start with. How thick is this grid work, pattern that you put down?
The grid itself is only about an inch thick.
Okay.
And then the base depends on what you're designing it for.
But again, there's nothing there. I think that's the main reason it gets so chewed up, because there's, you're right down on a hard surface, non-porous slab right underneath there, and,
Well, and the fact that you're driving cars on it
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
either way.
once or twice a week, yeah.
Right. So that's, I would have to go back and look,
I
see
just
if I
have to
have
go
any information about that entrance.
Dig down a little
because-
bit and see what else.
Yeah, that, I'm surprised if that is the case,
Well,
that the
I
slab
put
would have
in
been.
little tubes to stick our flags in,
Uh-huh.
and they're like 3 inches long,
Yeah.
just little copper tubes. And I cannot get them in that whole area, like in
Uh-huh.
front of the green, it's solid pavement underneath there.
And the soil does drop off fairly,
Yeah,
so it could be that it's just compacted
Right.
a lot more than initially.
right. Well, and that would be one of the things, one of the things that we would want to do if we install that at that end of the brick pavers, is to excavate down and see what's
Do some test
there
probes or whatever.
and potentially redo that. I mean, if you do that profile to support heavy loading like a fire truck, you need significant base material underneath that. Now, if what you're saying is true, there may be significant base material there already, and we may not need to worry about it. The trick with the grass pave product is making sure that you have enough soil or sand or mix that's not compacted, that the grass will grow and survive.
And it would be real grass down there.
Yeah, so that would be real grass that grows in between the grids. The grids and the base support the vehicular loading, and then that allows the grass to grow without having that constant compaction and.
So do you put sod on top of it, or is it, okay?
You put sod on top of it, yeah.
Because then what we have, as far as timing goes, since you're using real sod, there's a season for that.
Yeah, so ideally you would put that down so that the sod, like we did out here at the green, so that the sod goes down probably late March, early April, and has some time, 4 weeks or so, to put down its roots and green up and get rooted in, and before you start running traffic over.
But even foot traffic, with sod going down, most of the load is transferred onto that plastic grid rather
Right.
than on the sod itself. So
Right.
it's, yeah, you still want it to root and have time to get ready, but the whole basis of the whole thing is to just take all the load and put it on the plastic grid, which transfers it to a base rather than into the root system.
Right, but we still gotta be cognizant of the, June
Right.
1st
Oh, yeah.
or
Well,
May, if there's gonna be
The
May
beach
1st.
blast, the beach blast is in mid-May.
First Friday, we start. in
Food
May.
truck,
Yeah.
usually do a food truck
So
that
it's,
Friday.
yeah, that's the first event.
First Friday in May? Okay. So that would probably be fine, assuming that we can control the installation from start to finish and give the contractor that hard deadline. I wouldn't see an issue with that. It's not a big area, it's not gonna take long to install. And because of the grid, it's not gonna take as long for the establishment period, like we waited out here, 8 weeks, 10 weeks before we took that fence out. So that would be my recommendation, to try it, because if you test that out and it does well, and kind of solves those issues, then you can make a good, educated decision about, do we implement this around the rest of the green, or do we look at areas where we're really having problems and do it in,
Stages.
figure out how you want to do it.
Because if this works, then we're looking at the next year before we do
Yeah.
any more.
Right. But I think that's the right, it's kind of a unique situation, just because of the volume of the traffic out there. So I wouldn't ever advise you to spend, $300,000 trying to redo this whole thing and not know if that's gonna be a good solution for you. I mean, the other options are, like I think Matt mentioned, I mean, you'd have to pave it, which would just destroy the green. But that's really, if you want to not have the erosion and not have to replace the sod, I mean, that's the other option, is to pave it, which I think would be heartbreaking to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So,
And it might be eventually, if this grid works, that we could, if we like how it works, that we could just put it, I mean, there's a certain area primarily that is our traffic area.
Yep.
And we wouldn't have to put it all over the whole green, I wouldn't think. We would just
Right.
have to.
Food trucks.
Circle. Put it on the outside.
yeah, and I think you probably have a situation at that point that is pretty similar to a fire lane,
Mhm.
where it's
We do.
a pretty defined lane around there where the majority of that traffic is flowing and causing those problems. And if you fix that, the rest of it's probably gonna do fine. So that would be my recommendation for that.
And we can check, I know 12 Stone put a similar type thing down in an extra parking area that they had. But what I remember is they weren't real happy with the result. So I can find out which one they used.
Yeah, there are several
There's
different
a lot of them
products
out
out there. Gravel pave and grass pave are the most common ones. They've been around the longest. It's a company called Invisible Structures that makes those. But there are other products out there. I haven't used it on a project in recent history with grass. We've used it with gravel in a number of different applications. And that's what the majority of it is used with, is gravel. But the more common applications with grass end up being fire lanes and the overflow parking. But I'll send Matt some information that he can distribute for that product, and then there's other ones as well. It's pretty easy to install. It comes in big rolls, so you probably just get one roll worth, right? And then it rolls out, and it's got a bunch of anchors that get nailed into the base course, and then you backfill it with probably a topsoil sand mix similar to what we have out here, and put your sod down. So it's not a complicated installation.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
We use it at the Pentagon, so it has to be good.
All right, we'll have the update of ongoing projects. Matt?
Yeah, and a lot of these things we talked about at the retreat, so This will be one of our shorter project updates, but just a few things here to highlight. So the pavilion contractor, so town center construction progress, first item here, the pavilion contractor is still working on that punch list. Smith built on the market building. If you drive on Wisteria, you can see on that facade there, they're starting to lay the brick on that Wisteria side this week, and they're installing their interior MEPs. And the public restroom that will be along the path in between the library and the market, that has been complete. There's just a few minor punch list items, a final clean and things, but that has been built there. The lease prep with our market tenant is ongoing, and Chuck and his team are working on that. Sidewalk improvements, Skyline Construction is still going well. We held the pre-construction meeting for Pinehurst with a contractor where we went and looked at individual lots to make sure that they understood what was the expectation for some of these things. There's some lots require different kind of attention than others do, just on there's trees or topography or that sort of thing. So we want to make sure the contractor's clear on the plans for those specific lots. The contractor, hopping back over to Skyline, the Springdale culvert, they completed that replacement under the road there last week, and they're just working on the other side of the right-of-way there, the Tenney property right-of-way right there. Not really much to update on the city business cleanup, beautification, sanitation. Our code enforcement is working hard there. Same thing with our comprehensive plan update. The next item that we're in that comment period right now with ARC, and Jacobs is working on those. We discussed some of the kind of cursory items that were related to that as part of our retreat discussion on development and redevelopment in the town center. Package sales implementation, Chuck and his team are still handling those, responses and things, but where the lottery is delayed until further notice there. Briscoe Park. So the maintenance building interior work is nearly complete. They're going to be reaching out to the fire marshal, I think, this week to request their final inspection for their C of O, the life and safety inspection side of things. And then Lisa and I met today actually with GMC to kind of start that conversation on the design of the new community rec center. North in Wisteria, so I had 2 in-person meetings last week with folks, property owners along that project to discuss the right-of-way and the easement acquisition that we'll need there. Those meetings went okay, and we will continue to meet with folks along that project. And then the traffic calming initiatives item, so the contract has been executed by the city and by the contractor. We held the pre-construction meeting with the contractor last week. You'll see that they'll begin to kind of paint out on the road there where Larry and we have planned to have those those traffic calming islands, and then Larry and I will follow up. Once those are painted, we'll follow up with the homeowners that those are adjacent to and come out and let them look at it and make sure they understand the project and what will happen. And once all their questions are answered, then you'll see the contractor come back out and start work on those islands. And we're hoping that work will begin in February, depending on conversations we have with folks and making sure everyone's comfortable.
What's the turnaround time on finishing that?
They're pretty
Actual
quick.
construction time?
Usually it's 2 to 3 months. They're pretty fast on all 8 of them. on having them all in. You're really just kind of cutting out the road and some curbing, and then reinstalling the lip and the landscape. It's really not it's a very simple project, but it will take a couple months to do. But the main part is making sure that folks are comfortable with what's going on and understanding all of that before we start taking a little bit out of their, it's right away, but a little bit out of their yard, and replacing that back. Some folks have some beautiful yards that they maintain, along Tanglewood, so I'm sure they'll want to make sure that the sod is replaced and it looks as good or better than what it was before we started. So that's a pretty quick update, but most of that stuff we've been up to date on before.
Okay. Any questions? No. I think we are done with the work session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
And a second, all in favor? Okay. See y'all in there.